Hare Krishna, welcome to this section on rewiring your nervous system. Before we start speaking about how to heal from this nervous system dysregulation, we would need to pause because what we are entering here, this is not self-improvement, not emotional management, and it's not another attempt to fix the personality. What we are entering is what lives beneath our identity. So much of our suffering is not coming from what is happening right now, circumstances, difficult relationships, economic situation. It's coming from what still remaining, what is still living as if it's happening right now. Something that once moved through you, fear, longing, shock, loss, desire, and those things are still there. It's not completed. It's stayed. So not that it just stayed as a memory or as a story, but it stayed as a patterned energy within your psychic body, and of course, it transferred to the physical body. Of course, traditionally, ancient language, it's called karma. So, ancient traditions call this karma not as blame, not as destiny, not as moral judgment, essentially. If you study the Bhagavad Gita, if you study Upanishads, you see that karma is described as momentum, energy that has direction, habit, and even expectation. Modern psychology calls it trauma, conditioning, patterns, attachment, imprinting. Neuroscience also calls it autonomic patterning. Different languages, but the same truth in essence. So, this is why insight alone, it does not free us. You can understand your patterns, name them, analyze them, even take them, even try to do spiritual bypassing. And still, when the momentum comes, the body reacts, nervous system reacts, and we feel those symptoms even physically. The heart starts racing, breath is shortening, chemistry surges, and people get into relationships, although there are many red flags, so on and so forth. Then in that moment, choices disappears. Why did this person even end up marrying this other person? Why did this person tolerate so many things? And so on and so forth. Karma reveals itself in very interesting ways. So, this is not a weakness. This is karma living in your nervous system, living in your subtle body. In this course, we are not trying to override these responses. We are not trying to outgrow them through willpower, and we are not spiritualizing the pain in the name of surrender. We are learning how this stored momentum releases in each of your individual cases, how unfinished survival mechanisms, survival patterns, coping mechanisms, how those responses are trying to complete itself, and how the ancient samskaras, the imprints, how they are coming about, and how these burdens, it has a grip in your life. So, this course asks something subtle, but you can say radical. Not like, why am I like this? But what is still moving through me? What is my karmic pattern? And how can I rewire it? My understanding is when nervous system finds safety, karma begins to loosen. And only then can we rewrite our karmic patterns. When the body no longer needs to protect, then discernment returns. And then when discernment returns, choice becomes possible again. So the free will concept, which is so loosely and freely used, is not an easy thing. Very few percentage of people, very few occasions we truly have access to free will. So this is the ground we are standing on. From here, we will explore karma not just as fate, but as psychology. Karma not just as fate, but as physiology even. Samskaras as imprints in our body, in the subtle body, in the gross body. Vasanas as conditioned desire. Trauma bonds as energy that is misdirected. And healing as completion and not correction. So this is not about just becoming better. It is about becoming free, to be able to utilize free will in a more spiritual way. All right, let's see what karma really is. We would need to move from moral concept of karma to what it means in the lived momentum. When we hear the word karma, most of us unconsciously feel this tension. It's something written on stone, unchangeable, bothering, like punishing. So, because we have been taught to associate karma with consequence, reward and punishment, it's destiny, fate, not editable, something we deserve. But this is not how karma is described in the Vedic Upanishads. Because if you go deeper into the understanding of how karma actually manifests, karma is not just moral. Karma is not mechanical exactly. Karma simply means action that continues, the momentum that hasn't finished moving. This is especially true for relationships with ourselves, with others, and with God. Karma is momentum that did not complete. So, it's a response that began in your heart, in the body, in the nervous system, and was never allowed to finish, was never allowed to be completed. So, the energy stayed active. So imagine you're reaching out for a support. You're reaching out for this and not receiving it. The reaching doesn't stop, right? Sometimes it can just freeze. So imagine needing to say no and not being able to say no. The boundary doesn't disappear. Imagine feeling fear and having to suppress it. The fear doesn't necessarily leave. It has to manifest somewhere within the body, somehow. So it lodges in the body. This is karma. When we're speaking about relationship pattern rewiring, this is karma. So karma is not just sin or destiny or punishment. Karma is unresolved motion. So it's not that karma just lives in the thought or as a consequence external. It can actually live in your muscle tension, in breath patterns, in the tone of voice, in the attraction and aversions that we go through, and how close is too close, how alone is too alone. So you don't think karma, you enact it. So this is also why karma feels very personal, because it's carried as sensation, not just as philosophy. When a situation arises, the body recognizes the pattern before the mind can before the mind can interpret it. And in that moment, choice becomes unavailable. It collapses, actually. Not because you lack awareness, because awareness has not yet reached your nervous system. That's why the yogis especially emphasize the importance of body, mind, and soul, the alignment, the synchrony. That's why pranayama, the breath work is all considered very important to regulate the nervous system. So, from this lens, karma is not just about the past, it's about the present nervous system response being driven by an old imprint, the old samskaras, the old vasanas. The past is not over because the body may have never received closure. In fact, modern neuroscience confirms this, because trauma is not defined by the event itself, but by the nervous system's inability to return to baseline. And so even ancient texts, so even Vedic scriptures, they say the same thing differently, that karma persists until the momentum is exhausted. And we can end the momentum through many spiritual activities, but not if it's done mechanically. It needs to be done consciously. So this understanding changes everything. And the question becomes, and then you stop asking, what is wrong with me? And you begin asking, what is still incomplete inside me? What are certain lessons that I need to learn? Because until the lessons are learned, the patterns will keep repeating. You stop trying to overpower patterns and you begin to learn how to complete them. And this is where compassion also enters, because when you see karma as unfinished survival, judgment dissolves. So you don't necessarily see difficulties as bad karma, something unwanted. We see it as a debt to pay back. This is why, my dear friends, healing cannot be rushed, because karma does not dissolve through force. It dissolves when the body is again safe enough to finish what it once had to interrupt. The nervous system comes out of defense. The organism no longer needs to repeat the same loop life after life. ಈ ಸುಖಾಯಂಗಳ ಕಳೆದು 84 ಲಕ್ಷ ಜೀವರಾಶಿಯನ್ನು ದಾಟಿ ಬಂದ ಈ ಶರೀರ ತಾನಲ್ಲ ತನ್ನದಲ್ಲ ಆಸೆ ಖರವಲ್ಲ ಮುಂದೆ ಬಾಹುದಲ್ಲ ದಾಸನಾಗು ವಿಶೇಷನಾಗು ಭವಪಾಶನಿಗೋ. To overcome these karmic loops that we've been carrying for lifetimes and lifetimes and lifetimes, we need to understand how karma becomes latent, like Prarabdha karma, how it activates, how the Prarabdha karma works, how it leaves imprints, how it becomes Samskaras, how those imprints become desire and avoidance, vasanas. So this is a Vaishnav bhajan which explains how we carrying these samskaras and vasanas. So not as abstract philosophy, but as lived experience in the body, in the relationships. So a lot of times people do affirmations, but it's not really working because, internally the visualization and the fear is so strong. So the purpose of this course is to become free enough to actually choose what you want to visualize. It's not about toxic positivity. So that freedom begins when karma is no longer running silently in the nervous system, but you become really aware and you're ready to let go of it. So let's look at what Prarabdha karma means here. So the invisible load that we carry before anything happens. I think Prarabdha karma is one of the most misunderstood layer of karma because it's silent. It is hidden behind patterns that we've been carrying lifetime after lifetime. It does not announce itself through events. It does not show up as obvious trauma. It does not always come with a story, and yet it quietly shapes the entire nervous system. Our Prarabdha karma is actually easy to let go of, change it. Because Prarabdha karma is the kind of body you have, the kind of parents you have, the nation that you're born. You can't really change that. But Aprarabdha karma can be, but it's tricky. So Aprarabdha karma refers to karmic momentum that has not yet entered active expression. So it's on a subconscious level. But this does not mean that it's inactive. It means that the conditions have not yet called it forward. Not yet. For example, in the body, Prarabdha karma, it lives as baseline tension. People get stressed, explain vigilance and suspicion and doubt, subtle mistrust and feeling unsafe, difficulty resting even when life is calm, a quiet sense that something isn't right without a reason, external reason. So this is karma before the trigger. Trigger is like 1 second. Now it can happen any second. So this is a karma that just before the trigger, it's like latent, it's there. And Aprarabdha karma is not memory, it's readiness. So the distinction between these two matters here in this course. Aprarabdha karma is not about remembering the past. It's about the nervous system being pre-organized for certain outcomes. Because what's interesting is the body is already prepared for abandonment, criticism, over responsibility, emotional withdrawal. Can go on and on about more and more of these things. Even if none of those are happening now, you feel it in the background. So this is why people say, my life is fine, but I am never really relaxed. I don't trust calm. I'm waiting for something to go wrong. I don't know how to receive. I mess up relationships and I don't know why. So this is not pessimism. Just positive thinking is not going to work. This is a latent survival intelligence. And on a deeper level, there is generational Aprarabdha karma. One of the deepest layers of Aprarabdha karma is that much of it is not personal. You inherit certain strategies in your DNA, in your karma, through your parents. Not stories, but the strategies, coping mechanisms. I was talking with a friend that the parents never met the grandparents, but the parent would behave exactly like the grandparent. How danger was anticipated, how emotions were suppressed or exaggerated. So in yogic language, this is the kulanushaya. In modern psychology, this is intergenerational trauma, and all this is already explained in the Upanishads. So different words, but the same mechanism here. For example, a person grows up in a family where needs were inconvenient, emotions were overwhelming, help came with strings, you were expected to perform in order to receive care. The child adapts to it. So this is a karmic pattern there. Nervous system learns I will survive by not needing. But those little parts within us can be updated because you're not anymore that 5-year-old child. So as an adult, receiving feels uncomfortable. Intimacy feels intrusive. Rest may feel unsafe. So you need to not just know about it, but there are tools and ways you can communicate. I'll give another example here. Chronic over responsibility. So another example here, grows up watching a parent struggle emotionally. They become attuned, helpful, alert, careful, caring. Their nervous system learned that my safety depends on managing other people. And later, we may feel anxious when other people are unhappy. And then we may take responsibility for moods that you didn't cause. They or we struggle to let go. And if we keep experiencing this in the adulthood and we don't recognize it, it just gets worse and worse. And relationships start to become weak. So again, no single traumatic event is responsible, but it's a collection of so many of the many lifetimes of samskaras. So it's like karma waiting to manifest, to activate. Why Aprarabdha karma is so hard to see? Because it feels like personality. Some people say, I'm just like this. I've always been this way. This is my nature. But the acharyas, the great teachers, saints, or yogic psychology is precise here, that if there are certain instructions in the scriptures, it means we can follow it, but maybe the way we're doing it is wrong. So nature, prakriti, is shaped by conditioning. The self is prior to it, isn't it? So the aprarabdha karma, it hides because it has never been questioned. We accept that as, no, that's how I am. So it becomes very difficult. We follow that. So they say, scientists or scientific people say, therefore we only use 10% of the brain. So many people believe their baseline state is neutral. But for someone carrying a prarabdha karma, which most of us or everybody, we carry a prarabdha karma, the baseline is already defensive. So we're already limiting our potential. We breathing shallow, jaws are tight, mind is always constantly screening. So they don't necessarily feel anxious. They feel normal. Until the system is regulated, they don't know what true calm feels like. I have clients that have had those experiences. Now, aprarabdha karma activates through resonance. It does not activate randomly. It activates through resonance. Person or a type of person, tone, a dynamic, a familiar emotional frequency, all these things can trigger it. So it's like the nervous system says, this matches what I know, what I'm familiar with. Then aprarabdha karma, the unmanifested karma, becomes prarabdha karma, active and compelling, and we feel stuck. So the seed meets the soil, I would say. But why this is not a life sentence? Aprarabdha karma is potential. It's not destiny. It's not written in stone, as some people think. And then we, of course, because of practice of again and again and again manifesting those patterns and not rewiring ourselves, we lose our potential. Due to lack of awareness, lack of regulation, lack of need to understand the completion, people get stuck. And then it becomes a repetition of the karma. So when the nervous system experiences safety before activation, then aprarabdha karma begins to lose its potency. This is why regulation work is so powerful. So many tools to regulate our karmic patterns. Because otherwise it intervenes before the pattern runs. So in the next part, we will look at what happens when this imprint is triggered, when readiness turns into reaction, when momentum takes over the present. This is prarabdha karma, becomes manifest karma. But let me tell you, even there, healing is possible, because healing doesn't depend on the partner who abandoned you or betrayed you or abused you. Healing depends on you. So even there, healing is very much possible. Because in the prarabdha karma stage, when stored momentum takes over the present, prarabdha karma is the momentum when something inside you starts running. Not symbolically, not just philosophically, even physiologically. A lot of people get sick. So many kinds of so many people get sick. They get cancer because this energy has to manifest somewhere physiologically. So it is when that latent conditioning becomes You feel like it's inevitable. It's because it's already manifested. So Prarabdha karma refers to this karmic momentum that has entered its active expression when we have digested that aprarabdha karma. So this is karma in motion. In yogic language, it is the portion of karma that has begun to fructify, not whole of it. So in nervous system language, it is the momentum when the body shifts from its baseline into automatic survival response. So yeah, these things are better learned when we are younger because we are more malleable, and the more we age, we get accustomed to the way our nervous system learns how to respond and cope with stress and trauma and pain and karmic impressions. So how Prarabdha karma feels? Prarabdha karma does not feel like a choice. It feels like urgency, compulsion, inevitability, obsession. So I know better, but I can't control myself. I know this must be done, but I have no capacity. I know that this is wrong, but I feel unmanageable. Something takes over. Then, of course, in different levels, addictions can take over, health issues, etc. So people often describe this as, I don't know what happened. I lost myself, because we lose touch with the self. It was stronger than me. I didn't know. I couldn't be strong. So this is not a metaphor. It becomes like an automatic thing. So what actually happens in the body when Prarabdha karma activates, the amygdala fires before the cortex can evaluate. Stress hormones flood the system, and then attention narrows, the time collapses onto the present moment, and all the samskaras and vasanas all come at once. Come at you at once. So the nervous system is no longer asking, is it true? Is it healthy? Is it aligned? Is this person a red flag? Am I supposed to keep myself safe? Am I supposed to have boundaries? It's only asking, how do I survive this? So being in the present in this condition can be very, very sad and miserable. So this is why in these moments, logic disappears. And this is why insight fails. And this is why vows break. So one example of relationship activation, a person who has done years of inner work knows this dynamic is unhealthy. I have this particular pattern, it's unhealthy. But when the other person withdraws, becomes unpredictable, offers intermittent affection, the body responds with increased heart rate, obsessive thinking, loss of appetite, loss of sleep, intense longing, desperate longing. This is not romance. This is Prarabdha karma expressing through attachment circuitry, unhealthy attachment circuitry, clinging on, holding on to it, anxious attachment style. We'll talk more about this in the course. The nervous system recognizes a familiar survival challenge and mobilizes accordingly. Another example of conflict and collapse. A devotee, another person devotee, say, has a history of emotional overwhelm in childhood. When conflict arises in adulthood, their physical symptoms are, they may or may not notice. Most of the times people don't notice it. The chest tightens, their throat closes, their mind goes blank, they can't breathe properly, they freeze or fawn. We'll talk about this in the course. Later, they say, I wanted to speak, but I couldn't. And even in astrology, we can see certain planets being starved by other planets. Like when Saturn starves Sun, it's kind of like a prarabdha karma, which manifests that a person feels stuck. The body reenacts a learned survival response before conscious choice can intervene. So that's why it becomes difficult when it's strongly in karma. But again, astrological chart is not written on stone. Astrology works because there is free will. So Prarabdha karma is not a moral failure. It's just this is essential to emphasize. In other words, Prarabdha karma is not lack of discipline, lack of spirituality, lack of intelligence. None of that. It's just stored survival intelligence, something that you had to adopt in the past. So instead of asking, is this right for me? The nervous system, when it gets triggered, it's asking, what worked before? Let's try the same thing. See, it's very simple. So we need self-compassion to understand why we react in that way, the patterns, by beating ourselves up and being critical about those old ways of dealing, it's not going to help us. So, why repetition happens? People often ask, right, why do I keep repeating this same pattern? We'll talk more about this in the course. But in essence, Prarabdha karma seeks resolution. So the system is unconsciously attempting to master what was once overwhelming, complete what was once interrupted, and finally feel safe in a familiar environment or scenario. But repetition without regulation, it only strengthens the groove, because in that case, the samskaras, the impressions, deepens. And the vasanas, the desires, misplaced desires especially, it intensifies. So this is why repetition alone does not heal. So in the internal family systems lens, parts of us take over, those traumatized parts, those parts which are trying to manage the coping mechanism, they take over. So prarabdha karma is the moment when parts hijack the system, exiles those parts of us that were abandoned, neglected. They carry the original pain, and protectors, they rush in to manage or suppress our emotions. There are firefighters that act impulsively to discharge intensity. So we will study more about this in this section on the internal family systems. I look forward to meeting you in live classroom. So the access to self becomes very weak. So this is not pathology. This is organization under threat. Now, all the parts of us that are trying to protect us. Why pausing is so hard in these situations? People are often told, just pause, just respond, don't react. These are these formulas. But when the prarabdha karma is activated, the nervous system cannot pause. So if you know, maybe yourself or other people, but you see that they can't just pause. It's a fight or flight response. Pause requires to feel safety, to feel regulation. Without these, the system moves too fast. That's why in this section we'll be focusing a lot on understanding why regulation must be practiced before activation and not demanded during it. It's a process. It's not a product. So how Prarabdha karma begins to release? Prarabdha karma releases not through resistance, but through new experiences of safety while activated. This is subtle, but it's very powerful. So when your body feels this familiar surge, but it does not collapse or act it out, remains present with support, then something new happens. Then the loop, it does not complete in the old way. Then we are bringing the lesson to the nervous system. This can end differently. I can take a stand for myself, something that my father didn't do for me. I can build my own sense of clarity and focus that maybe as a child I didn't get from my ambience. So this is karma digestion. You digest what has happened, but you take that to make the better version of yourself so you can reach the potential. Because karma just doesn't happen by chance. So all these things that happens to us, it's to slow us down. Plus, prarabdha karma always weakens gradually. It's never like always strong. So not through dramatic breakthroughs, but it actually loosens when we slightly give more space to yourself, slightly less urgency, give yourself more choices, coping mechanisms that are healthy. Instead of binge watching, you go and relax and take a shower, things like which are healthy for the body. But then the sign of healing is not intensity, it's increased neutrality. So when you can actually, not that you hate someone or you love and obsess about someone, but you just feel indifferent, that's a sign of recovery. So true responsibility begins with not with self-blame, but with capacity building. It's very important. We'll discuss more about the necessity for capacity over compatibility. You are not responsible for having prarabdha karma. You are responsible, however, for noticing the activation that happens in the body and your patterns in relationship, building a system of regulation as an adult. You can't keep blaming your parents forever. You have to create conditions where choices can return. This is maturity. This is dharma. But again, with patience, with compassion. All right, now we talk about samskaras. Samskaras are very important, how the experiences of many lifetimes and our upbringing. So if prarabdha karma is movement, then samskara is what that movement leaves behind. A samskara is not an idea. It's not a belief. It's not even a memory. A samskara is like the groove in the subtle body. So in yogic psychology, samskara literally means that which has been well formed, trained. So something that has been shaped, not symbolically, but physiologically, emotionally, energetically. So how are samskaras formed? These are impressions, okay? Samskaras are impressions. They come from conditions, high emotional charge, limited choice, lack of completion or need for regulation, need for resolution. So the nervous system does not just register what occurred. What it registers is this is how reality works. So modern neuroscience, it mirrors this principle. When stress hormones are very high in a person, then the system cannot resolve or escape. The brain shifts, learning from conscious memory to procedural and implicit memory. So, in other words, you don't remember it, but you become organized by it. You get influenced by it. So, the organization is samskara. And so, in this IFS, internal family systems, we'll go more into it because it's very crucial to understand how samskaras operate below language. This is why people say, I don't know why I react like this. It doesn't make sense. I can't explain it because there are parts within us which haven't been given attention to. So samskara belongs to the body, nervous system, emotional field, and it can be reshaped with new association, new literature. So a person may feel sudden fear when someone is disappointed with them. There's no memory of being punished, no clear trauma, but the body responds as if something terrible is about to happen. Have you experienced something like that? This is the samskara. So the body learned long ago that disapproval means danger. So the learning stayed even when the original context disappeared. This is just a small example of samskaras. So samskaras is why patterns feel like truth. So samskaras don't announce themselves as conditionings. They present themselves as instinct, intuition, chemistry, personality, just how things are. This is why people confuse samskara with self. They think this is me. No, self is pure. Shastric evidence is that the self witnesses the samskara. It's not formed by them. So samskaras don't just shape behavior. They shape what you perceive as real. That's what we call as blended. So two people can be in the same situation but experience entirely different realities. So the nervous systems are filtering experiences differently. The samskaras highlight certain cues and ignore others. So this is why safety can feel boring to one person and threatening to another person, and intimacy can feel nourishing to somebody and invasive to another. So reality is filtered through our samskaras. Relationship samskaras are very complex because there's two people involved. Most samskaras, because relationships activate attachment dynamics, early survival learning, emotional vulnerability. So when availability feels unsafe, someone meets a very kind, emotionally available partner. There's no drama, no unpredictability, no chase. Instead of feeling relief, the body will actually feel flat, restless, disconnected, hyper. And I know people that actually say that their mind just goes, they're nice, but I don't feel it. I know so many women who want to get married, but they're like, I don't feel it with this person because it's too boring. They're attracted to some kind of trauma bond because that kind of chaos feels familiar. What's happening is not lack of chemistry. It's the samskara that learned love involves tension. The nervous system is understimulated because it expects struggle. For example, conflict equals abandonment. Another person cannot tolerate disagreement, so conflict avoidant. Any little thing triggers them. Even minor conflict triggers their panic, appeasement, shutdown. And so that samskara formed when maybe conflict once threatened connection or safety. Now the body reacts as if disagreement is equal to loss. So samskara and identity, this is where people get stuck because samskaras feel continuous. They feel like identity. People say, I'm anxious, I'm an avoidant, I'm intense, I'm needy. But these are descriptions of conditioned responses. It's not the self. Samskaras, they happen because they were never questioned, they were never corrected, they were never updated. So every prarabdha karma runs and the response completes in its old way, the samskara deepens. So this is why repetition strengthens patterns. Insight alone does not stop this. Only new experiences, new samskaras can. So samskaras can soften with when the nervous system learns to respond differently. For example, staying present, feeling angry without collapsing, tolerating closeness and not running away. So all these things can loosen, not dramatically, but gradually. So this is repatterning, rewiring. And you cannot argue with the samskara. You cannot shame it. You cannot outthink it because it was formed when thinking was unavailable. So this is why nervous system regulation is not optional if you want to have healthy relationship. It's the language of your own samskaras that you need to understand, your own impressions. And then there's the vasanas. So now we come to the most important question. How does karma actually release in lived experience? See, release is not erasure. The first thing to understand is karma does not disappear because it is understood. It releases only when it's completed because it was interrupted. This is why karma dissolves through integration, not through suppression, avoidance, or spiritual bypassing. Almost always, these things got interrupted because you never expressed, you never tried to regulate. So the nervous system maybe it froze. So release happens when you learn the tools and techniques that you don't have to deal with it anymore like that. The nervous system does update through insights, through conversations, internal conversation, awareness, feeling of safety and presence, which you can create for yourself. Then our system can recalibrate. Instead of saying, oh, it's over, I can't do this anymore. Body feels it, but without reacting to it. So the nervous system regulation's not just a technique, it's a lifestyle. Without regulation, insight becomes intellectual, and then hearing becomes performative. And then, if we need to loosen the karma, we need to know. This nervous system regulation is the entry point for our liberation. So, when this happens, something ancient, karmic burdens shift. So, this is survivable. This can end differently. I'm not trapped. Then we learn how to release. So, the missing moment in trauma science is a term completion of the stress response. So in yogic languages, karma kshaya. So in the moment of karmic completion. So it may not be like shaking and crying and spontaneous breathing and warmth and deep rest and deep clarity. It may not be so dramatic, but they're physiological closures. You feel healthier. Your system is holding less stress. And many people expect release in a dramatic way, but sattva guna is the way. Less urgency, less obsession, less reactivity, more space. Then, you don't have to like feel healed in a dramatic way. So first the drama leaves, then there's a neutral phase. After the release, you feel that you're not looking forward to be misunderstood. You don't feel just flat or there's no highs and lows. So that's when the deconditioning begins. So no longer you're not ruled by the old vasanas, the tendencies. You're not rushed to fill that. So we have like a whole meeting dedicated for addiction, overthinking addiction, where we need to learn to be in the present, develop faith in the Lord, then we get a different outcome. This is why healing requires slowing down, not rushing. Compassion here is a prerequisite. The gentle presence can really dissolve a lot of karmic baggage. So you will learn in this course the ability to pause, to feel, to not act immediately, to learn how to use your intelligent discernment, and some techniques, tools for internal family system, understanding your human design, understanding your enneagram. Then layer by layer, you get ready for that spiritual maturity. This is where you become spiritually grounded, emotionally mature, in capacity, the capacity to remain present, to process things without reacting. So it's like a daily life liberation. So karma does not end because we fight it. It ends because the body finally learns that it no longer has to function in the same way. Then healing becomes available to us better. So from here, our course will become more and more, getting more and more into these topics. So you can improve in different areas of your life and learn how nervous system regulation can become foundation for dharma. So in this section of nervous system regulation, we will give the basics before we get into the techniques and tools and different strategies to help you cope. So sorry for the long video, but some of these things needs to be understood. Take care until the next video. Hare Krishna.